And Bill, you were alive. All right.
It's not, but you can have it. All right, I'm going to call the Tree Protection Board meeting to order. It's April 12, 2021. Our first order of business is to approve minutes from March 8th. And I believe I see one correction on there. It indicates that I was at the meeting last time. I was not, and David Morse was not at the meeting. So I think David's name needs to be included and mine struck. Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes with the corrections?
I move.
Have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Old business 401 Beaufort Street. I know we have a property owner here.
I was here last month. I was ill prepared. I think I was. I thought I was prepared, but after the meeting, I was a little frustrated, and so I went back to my office. I talked to my office administrator. I said, "Listen, Mallory, I need to go to the blueberry field. My mother has some blueberry bushes. In Old Quail Arbor, she's got 300 bushes." And I said, "I'm going to go out there and work out there and do some manual labor and get some of my frustrations out." And she said she would take care of things. And when I went out there, I thought about how I should approach not being approved last month. And I thought about what my father would say. He's been gone 25 years. He would say, "Gary, you don't have a right to get upset until you go out and gather the facts without prejudice." He used to tell me that when I was young. I didn't know what that meant, without prejudice. But it meant without emotions, not going looking for one side or the other. So that's what I've been trying to do. He always said to know who you're talking to. So the first thing I did, the next day I called Bill and asked Bill about, do the tree committee, do they have resumes? Can I go on the website and look? And he said, "I don't think so." So I called Jessie and asked Jessie the same thing. She said that they don't. And you should, because I've done some research. And by the way, what I have found is that there's no reason why you should not be on the committee. If I want to know whether to plant a plant or a bush, whether it's sun tolerant or shade tolerant, I would talk to somebody on this committee. If I want to know about a particular tree, the characteristics of it, disease and things like that, I would talk to somebody on this committee. If I wanted to know about greenhouses, and my mother had greenhouse on those 3 acres, I would talk to somebody on this committee. If I want to know about a forestry question, I would talk to somebody on this committee. So when it comes to finding facts without prejudice, I think I have done that as it pertains to you. Everybody has a resume. I have one too. I'm in the insurance business. May the 21st, the 42 years in the multi-line insurance business. So my resume goes like this. I'm agent, sales manager, district manager, regional director, regional vice president over 1/4 of the company's field operation, multi-line general agent. I've been in a lot of different chairs. One thing I'm not good at is being at the podium, so excuse me for that. But by the way, I even asked, after talking to Jesse, I talked to Bill I got a lot on Hansberry Lane, and I said, Bill, tell me about Jesse. She okay? He said, Jerry, she's the best boss I've ever worked for. And we were just talking casually. I kind of caught him off guard. I think that was a correct quote. So you had asked me some questions for me to research. I think Peter did. The distance from that live oak, that big live oak, to the Beaufort side, and it's 62 feet. My the house size is 64 feet wide. So there's no way you could put that house beside that tree on the Foster side. Couldn't go back because we got even less distance on the back side. And and I went and put that house, the footprint of that house plan on different places. I provided that information for you as well. You have that documentation. I think they asked me about looking at alternative plans. I talked to my wife about that, and she talked about an L-shaped house. And my wife doesn't want an L-shaped house, and it kind of defeats what you tell me is acceptable. Jesse, this documentation, can you put this documentation up? No.
Which document are you referencing there? I mean, the title or?
This came from the town on the planning committee. It would have come from y'all too.
No, I don't have that.
Well, let me read it to you. When you submit your house plans, they will send you a documentation once it's approved, and then it will tell you what you have to do. And it says all trees to remain will be shown with tree barricades to be installed before permit issuance. Barricade standard is a foot radius for every inch of DBH. I don't know what DBH is, but of the tree. Example: a 6-foot pine would have a 6-inch pine would have a 6-foot radius. I asked Bill about that. I said, why would you want to put a fence around it? And of course, Bill said to protect the roots, because you know how construction people are. They'll drop a bundle of 2x4s next to a tree, or they'll drop the plywood next to the tree, and also to prevent workers from driving across the root system. It would damage the root, kill the tree. Am I accurate in that? Anyway, so I explored the L-shaped house, and that footprint of that house would run across in between the Foster Street side, those 3 live oaks I have, and the big live oak, and possibly kill those trees as well. And I want to keep those trees. And I would want to do everything possible to do that. So I've explored that option. I talked to I hired an arborist, Nathaniel. He wrote that letter that Jesse put up here just a minute ago. That letter, I think, is self-explanatory. I don't think I need to go over that with you. I think you probably already read it. And I told Nathaniel he didn't need to be here. I've never met Nathaniel before until this past month. So really the only way that I can build my house would be to remove that big tree. And I know now, you hear about people going before the tree committee and they get a little frustrated, by the way. I try not to get too frustrated and say something that I shouldn't say because it doesn't work out well. And down the road, by the way, I'm going to be your neighbor, you're going to be my neighbor. And you don't want ill feelings. You just don't want that. It just doesn't make sense. So I've tried to gather, I've tried to think this through to see how I could keep that tree, and I just can't keep it. The frustrating thing about it is before I can even stand before you today or last month, there's a process you have to go through, and you're not involved in that process. But let me tell you what that process is. That process is you have to get a survey done. There was not a survey on that lot. So I had to get a survey, had to get the trees plotted, had to get the footprint of the house plotted. The house had to be approved it had to be a South Carolina engineered approved home. So you have to buy the house plans and then you have to get that approved, any changes that you want. Well, that's $3,500 to get an engineer to do that. It's $1,200 to buy the plan. Maybe a little more than $1,200. It cost me about $1,000 to get the survey done before I can even sit here and stand here before you and discuss the tree. I spent about $6,000. And then, Faye, when you mentioned that I look at different house plans, which, by the way, is an excellent suggestion. You're talking about another probably $5,000. And I think a little bit about my son who wants to build a house. And what about an individual that he doesn't have $5,000 to possibly just throw away, or $6,000 to throw away? It looked, and I tried to come before the committee before I had all that. I was turned down before I got my plans, before I spent that money. And I can afford to do it, by the way. But I think about my son and other people that are less fortunate, and it seems like the system is a little bit backwards. Has nothing to do with you and probably nothing to do with this conversation, but that's the reason when I talk to people, I've talked probably 100 people in these last 30 days. Some of these people have been before you. And a lot of them express frustration. The people that I know and trust, that's where I make my decision. Like, for an example, Steve Patterson, I trust Steve. I said, Steve, tell me about these people. And the information, by the way, was positive. Chris Sessoms, he's in my Sunday school class. I asked Chris, I said, is Faye okay? She's okay. That's what he said. He says, I have breakfast or something with a group or something. I don't know. But anyway, he said she was okay. I have tried to do my due diligence. I just don't know any other way to build that house, which will be probably my last house, and without taking that large tree down. And that, of course, there's two other trees that I mentioned before that I didn't think y'all had an issue with when I talked to you last month. Now, any questions that you have of me? Oh, by the way, my 42 years of experience, I have dealt a lot with tree-related claims. I have seen more tree-related claims than probably all of you put together. I'm not bragging about that because I wish that was not the case. And I deal with these people, and being in a cat area, and a cat area in our business is a catastrophic area. You have tornadoes in the Midwest, you got hurricanes here. And the property and casualty business is not like the life business. The life business is the 60-year-old. I don't know if a 60-year-old, this man's going to live or die this year, but we know how many 60-year-olds are going to live and die. That's more or less of an exact science. And but when it comes to property and casualty, we don't know when the hurricane's going to come. They call it before hurricanes to hit land. They don't ever get that quite right, but that's not an exact science. But if a hurricane came, a named storm came through Somerville, and that tree was the branches and limbs came down from that hurricane. I mean, that's some extensive damage. We won't even write a home, place homeowners insurance on a new structure if there's a limb hanging over it, much less insuring a home that has a tree that has some damage to it hanging over the roof. You know, an insurance company that's in the business of making money, they make money by insuring homes. If they say they don't want to insure a home because of limbs being over the roof, there's a reason for that, for them to not insure that home, not to take in that premium. And now the exception to the trees in this area, there is an exception, and that exception is a live oak. It's got some properties that other trees don't have. It's not like a pine where you got weight of ice and snow and it just breaks off. It's not brittle like a cherry tree, for example. It gives, and then when that ice melts away, the limbs pop right back up. It just doesn't break. But if it's a named storm and it comes through, I've seen it more times than I would want to say. Damaged homes, cars. It's just the way it is when it comes to a named storm. And depending on how that wind hits that tree, if it's got a breaking point in it, it's going to break. So I'm concerned about that's another concern that I have. I think I've covered about everything that I wanted to say. So I apologize for taking up this much time.
All right, well, thank you for your comments. Is there any questions for Mr. Onion from the board? Or
I've got a couple of things I'd like to say. Yeah, we are certainly all aware. You went to Google, I went to Google, most everybody in here. It can be as totally random as possible. We can't cut every tree down because of the randomness of the potential to break our house. I understand the sensitivity of the industry now that why take the chance if you got a tree with big branches overhead, new construction, okay. I can understand, but that's we're aware of that. We're aware of the arborist's letter, which was filled with exaggeration. However, I can't dispute the footage and the encroachment on the CRZ. No matter where you put the house, that's obvious. That at least was factually the best factual information in that report. A lot of the rest of it was some hyperbole, but that's okay. We pretty much operate under the guise of the ordinance to have it's sort of almost undisturbing that you feel compelled to find out if everybody on the board is okay. Every decision, every quote, every sentence we say is due to the wording of the ordinance. One of them is what you went ahead and did. That's what we wanted you to do, is to go and examine different configurations. It wasn't totally acceptable to you. We can't make you change your house configuration. And you know that, I'm sure you read the ordinance. But you did what we asked. And so those are truths, those are obvious. We can do nothing about that. I will say that it is my understanding that before you bought the property, you were made aware or cautioned that this would not be easy because it's a small lot. It's not just a grand tree, it's a very grand tree, 72 inches in diameter. That would not be straightforward. And then you went ahead and bought the property anyhow. I know you wanted to be in town and close to the old part of town. You told us that last time. But I somehow have a hard time not feeling that to buy that lot of the house size that you have, granted, it's not a big house, 1,900 square feet, less than 1,900 square feet is not a big house. But single story, it does take up a lot of room on a quarter-acre lot. So that was almost like an insult to the tree and the property and the town in a way. If there's flexibility to find a lot elsewhere to sacrifice a tree of that magnitude.
Yeah.
And that's where the human side of us come in. But we applied everything we've spoken about, everything we've decided, everything we've thought about is based on the construction of the ordinance. And I have a question for you.
Okay.
Good. Since we have to, if this is approved, this is a rather magnificent tree, as you will agree, I'm sure. Would you be willing to make some mitigation for that tree to compensate for its loss to the town or the community there?
Well, if I can respond to your first comment, and then I will answer if that's okay.
Sure.
As it pertains to the assumption that I bought that property with the knowledge about that tree and things like that. That's not how it works. I think, Bill, you just bought a piece of property. Did you investigate the trees? Did you look at things for like 3 or 4 days before you made an offer? If you did, you wouldn't have gotten the house. Is that accurate? I don't know if that's accurate or not. I know that there were 3 people waiting in line to buy that lot. My son called me. He said that the woman is at the property right now. It was at 7:30. He told me I was watching TV. He said that she's at the property. She can't get into a house. She just inherited that house. She couldn't get into that house. I think you know the woman I bought it from. I'm trying to think of her name. But anyway, she worked for Westvaco. And he said, you better come now. He said, 3 people have already offered to buy that lot. So I drove from Coosaw, went straight there, got there about 8:15, I reckon, and made her an offer. And the reason that she sold it to me was because I said that I was going to take down that shack that she had there, and it was in disrepair. I was going to take that down so she didn't have to worry about an inspection, and that I could close the following week. And that kind of, that's what moved it. But I did not have any opportunity to investigate, to look at. I had no time whatsoever. You know how Well, your wife is a realtor, I think,
See?
used to be. Well, you know what the property is moving. I mean, if you list it today, it's going to be gone today. If it's in a good location, it will move right away. So all these properties that we're talking about now, I didn't even think about that. I mean, I really didn't. I just moved as swiftly as possible because it was the location was just really nice, and it's in town. My son lived right around the corner on Peter Street, and so in that regard, I was not disingenuous. I can assure you of that.
Well, I can understand that pressure. I've heard it many for years and years in circumstances associated with real estate.
That's one of the reasons I'm trying to press and get this done now, so I can get my house sold in Coosaw. Get this house built because I'm not going to move out of my house in Coosaw until I get this house built, and I don't know what the market's going to look like 9 months down the road when this house is completed. So that's a concern of mine. Is the market still going to be robust at that particular time? So, now, to get back to your question, I don't know, what are we talking about?
I think you probably could discuss it with Bill. Would be there's a number of ways that mitigation is done for a tree that when mitigation is required. If it's in the footprint or challenged by the footprint, then mitigation is not required. And it's often described in terms of number of inches of diameter. If you have, a 6-foot tree, you would divide that by that 2.5-inch diameter trees. Will be you've seen this thing probably. It's based on the diameter, but that's 100%. There's that varying degrees of that. There's no requirement for them. But this is maybe almost as a
Goodwill gesture.
Goodwill gesture. An ordinance that describes this.
I got you.
Under these circumstances, this is extra. We would just very appreciate that very much. And you could certainly work that with Bill.
Okay, I'll do that. Now the other 2 trees, that magnolia that's going up, the approval on that, and the small, the damaged live oak that's on the front, the short one looks like it's been cut off somehow. Do I have approval on that?
Well, the small one is not even, it's the town or state property. One of those live oaks is 2. It was my understanding that there was some discussion about perhaps if you can seek a variance to move that house back 5 feet toward the Nellie's house.
Nellie's.
And if that were the case, I believe we would like to save that magnolia because its roots are entwined in the roots of live oaks, which have migrated that way because the site is probably very wet. And I know it's wet. I've seen it after it rains. It's low. You're gonna have to put a bunch of fill on there. The further away it is, the less damaging 18 inches of fill might be to the extent of those roots. So we didn't see a biological reason to remove the magnolia. No, it's not like an arboretum with one tree here and one tree here, but it's like an urban forest too. And if that, we will need to discuss that or vote on that. But that's my feeling. If we're going to move back, that's possible.
Yeah.
To help save those very nice oaks that are on the edge of the street.
Yeah, I want to save those.
Yes, sure. Then we think I might want to see the magnolia stay.
Yeah, and the only reason I would want that magnolia is because it's growing right up into that, one of the nicer live oaks in the front, and I want to allow that.
But they can live in consort. You can see it in the woods and the forest. It's not always spaced evenly. But this is for a discussion here. This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I believe, again, the request or the option to moving the house back from the setback is not a requirement here. I mean,
that's correct. If you're willing to do that, you have to ask for that variance.
Yeah, because I moved it back to where the requirements were, 25 feet.
Right.
And I would like to. I would probably address that with the neighbor back there.
Well, that's polite to do, yes.
And I've moved it as far over to the Ashley side. It's 12 feet off. And the reason I didn't go to the 10 feet is because she's going to put up, she's got a pool going in over there. I see the pool going in. And I went over there and asked her about fencing. And she's going to put a big fence in, so you don't want to look out a window and see it. You know, nothing but a big fence right next to it. So 12 feet, I think, is the right distance there.
Another illustration of why we look at have every option available and explore different possibilities. And we want to supplement that with that. And there is one everything.
I appreciate that.
Are there any more questions or comments from the board? Does anybody want to make a motion? All right, well, I'll make a motion based on the evidence and information we received, the wording in the ordinance, that we approve the 72-inch tree to be removed. At the same time, we ask that the magnolia and the other trees in the front on Buford Street be protected best that you can. And future will show whether that they'll survive or not. Do I have a second? Any discussion? Okay, I know this is important to the board and to the property, so we're going to do a roll call on this particular one. All in favor of the motion to remove the 72-inch tree and protect the other three? How do you vote? Aye, Faye? Ginger Riley? I also vote aye. David Morris? And Peter Wallace.
I'll abstain, with respect to the tree.
The motion carries. Permit will be issued.
That's all you need of me.
Bill, you want to explain real quick about the permit?
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, our next old business could be 825 North Main Street, removal of 2 pines. Is there anybody here representing?
Good morning. Actually I'm a guy about pictures. So I created a small brief. I promise you 8 minutes. I'll be in and out. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If we can pass this to the board. Sure. Yeah. And one for the county, the city. Thank you. Quick introduction. My name is Jack Garrell. I'm the owner of Superior Blacktop Services. Come to know the owner of the property, Mr. Hertzen, who owned 825, the Speedy Gas Oil place. He recently this year purchased the lot next to him, the Midas, at 807. And if you'll see on the first page, the distinction of both parking lots, the 2 pine trees that we're talking about requesting to be removed is on the lot that he just purchased. So there's several issues that we want to take and present to you that we feel the reasons to take down the trees. A couple of them are trip hazards from the roots and stuff, flooding concerns, and also, more importantly, pedestrians, vehicles, clients, and employees of the size of the trees. These are the only two trees we're asking. You can see on the lot, both lots carry several pine trees, fully, just tons of trees. We are, as Mr. Jenkins spoke, willing to mitigation as far as adding more trees and bushes to continue to beautify this. The other factor that Mr. Hartzong wanted to also bring up was, since of COVID-19, a lot of people that come into these facilities, getting their oil changed, stuff like that, hang out in the parking lot. And this is pretty much a common area where they hang out at. So he's got safety concerns there. Page 2, we can just continue to turn, shows you the size of the trees. And because of the brush and pine needles and stuff, you can see where the ditch is supposed to allow runoff water to go to the back of the property, continuously clogs up. Page 3 is a
Can I stop you just real quick? So
Yes, sir.
you're saying the problem with the flooding is the pine needles and limbs that come in that ditch, not necessarily the root system under the tree, or?
Yes, sir. It's a grading and also the roots as well. And we'll show you more pictures that kind of show with a level I put up against the tree, and it shows you exactly where all this water is going to and how it's preventing the property for proper runoff on the water during storm. Page 3 is a contract that we have with Mr. Hurlong. What we're proposing to do is mill and pave the 825 lot. If you look at page 4, it's the red area. One of our concerns is when we start milling, that we do hit tree roots on the middle right there. And we're kind of concerned about damaging the roots as well. The lot next to it, you'll see that there's going to be some small asphalt repairs, but we plan on seal coating that lot. Page 5 shows that I'm a general contractor approved by the state of South Carolina. I've passed numerous tests that qualifies me as an expert in asphalt grading. And page 6 and 7 is the tree ordinance website, but particularly on page 7, if you'll look at the marked areas, the concerns that we do have is for the safety. Glasses are fogging up, but the safety of vehicles, safety of pedestrians, clients, employees, about the size of these trees. And we'll be looking at pictures here shortly that's going to show our concerns. Page 8, if you take a look at the side, this is a view from the 807 lot looking at the Speedy Oil. You can see that these trees are very high, approximately 60 feet in height, but the lower branches are all missing due to high winds and stuff like that. So it's not the tree is fully intact, that it continues to lose limbs, and we're concerned about vehicle damage. Again, more on the pedestrian client side. You look at the bottom of the page, in my opinion, the tree, the taller tree to the right is leaning towards the building. And if it windstorm does come up, it is going to damage the building and could push over to the other building. The next concerns that we have on page 9 is a grade and elevation. Again, picture's worth 1,000 words. If I look at just at the top page of the picture, you can see a distinction as far as where all the water's coming to, and that's in the middle of the parking lot. The bottom of it shows a level. It's very obvious to show you exactly where the water's flowing, not where the intent of where the water needs to go. Page 10, again, if you'll take a look at the level, you can see it's raised up from where the drain is supposed to go and the water's supposed to go. Again, flowing back to the middle of the parking lot. The other concern is that if you look at the base of the trees at the bottom, you'll see that all that area, the ground, is super wet. So we're concerned about the stability of the trees. And also, some of this is caused by vehicles coming in, but you can see already, you know, the root or tire marks coming through. So we want to be able to build that up a little. Again, page 11 shows you the distinction in the asphalt, the different levels. And then again, flowing, if this is a picture on the bottom, that's Midas, you can see that the level is going back the other way instead of going to the drain. Couple more pictures on page 12 to show some of that as well, that it's not going towards the design of the ditch, but going the opposite way. So the question is, are the trees healthy? I'm going to rely on the expert here from the town that said that they were healthy. But in my opinion, when I look at it and it's missing the tree limbs from 3/4 of the way up, tells me that these tree limbs are breaking off for whatever reason. And then the growth and stuff that is going up the tree on the bottom of the pine tree in the bottom picture. And then I live at 694 Grayback Road by the airport. And to me, that's what a healthy pine tree looks like on page 14. So Jerry, who was here presenting before you, actually, we coached Little League Baseball together. So I know Heath and my son were the same, but he's in the insurance business. Again, what we're concerned about is that we already are aware of a problem. If you look at the top picture up by the car, that is an old stump right there. And you can see roots coming out of it. On the bottom picture, if you look to the left by the car, you can actually see the stump. During the storm, that tree had fallen, and so they had cut it down. We're concerned about that because if you look on page 16 and 17, it talks about the courts have found out that if you are knowing that you know that you have trees that have fallen and you don't do anything about it, that you could be, your claim could be denied and you could face lawsuit. So we want to bring that to your attention, and you can read the rest of this for your perusal. And finally, on page 18 is a letter from Mr. Herlong, and it goes into some of his concerns that I've addressed to you as far as the safety and stuff. He's asking for these 2 trees to come down. He's willing to add more trees to the lot, but his concern is that of his employees, of the property that he's invested in, spent a ton of money in, the asphalt that he is spending money to get paved to make it look more presentable, because the asphalt's been there for about 25 years. But he is requesting, if the board votes against it, a letter indemnifying his family and his business of all liabilities in the future. I think, you know, the evidence that we have provided, and not disputing the arborist, but I think a lot of this falls in the categories of allowing us to move forward, taking down the trees with your permission.
So
That's all I got.
the actual drainage on those 2 properties, was the drainage done wrong initially, or is it settled over the years?
Just settled over the years. And so they both own, they had a kind of a byway where they can go both in the properties and stuff. So the person who owned the trees, where the trees at now, he just didn't want to take care of his property. And so when Mr. Hertzong bought that property this year, he noticed those issues and wanted to correct it. He's spending them. It's a mess. Yes, sir. So he's spending the money to implement a new parking lot. We're charging over 60 grand to put in that parking lot and make it more appealing for the town, stuff like that.
Where would these trees go that would be mitigated?
We, up to your suggestion, will be more than, you know, whatever he's willing to do, put more azaleas there. His thoughts are is taking this area and turning it into a picnic area. So the customers who come in there for oil changes will have some place to sit down.
How many square feet?
Probably 100 square feet.
Because I know that in the back is some disorder, the stump cut, and that's not sure that's where the parking lot's going to go. Is that correct?
No,
The bare earth?
no, sir. It's just the existing parking lot that's there. In the back, he's cleaned that up a lot. There's probably about 25 pine trees back there. So, but we would kind of like to make that area a place because most customers don't want to sit inside, especially with COVID-19 stuff. And then this area would be kind of a common area that people can go and kind of enjoy the beauty in summer.
So basically, the mound upon which the trees are sitting, if you will, needs to be graded out to accommodate water flow. Is that
Correct. So our goal is here to take down the 2 trees and the existing stump that is presently about 15 feet from those 2 trees and take all the roots out as well. So we have proper drainage and, you know, again, it's about the safety of their employees and customers.
There are sites that you can go on and discover how much water those trees consume daily.
Yes.
And it's always surprising, shocking to me to discover how many gallons per day.
Correct.
You're talking about drainage. And if you take those 2 trees down, I would think that you're probably going to have some water flooding problems.
I would agree to a certain point, but when we change the elevation, once these trees are down, and how it is permitted by the town to have the drainage go between both properties and out to the back, I don't think there'll be a problem. We'll have proper fall for that.
In the area of mitigation, we do have room, because if we do the standard mitigation formula, it will be for canopy trees, not for the day.
That'll be fine. Yes, sir.
You know, like,
Whatever
it
the,
doesn't have to be a pine tree. It could be an oak tree, hickory tree, you know, a canopy tree, one that becomes canopy, which is probably better for a waiting area, if you will, in the future. Take a while to have the shade, but
and I said 100 square feet. I can see this being 400 square feet. We want to be able to set the trees back far enough that we don't run into this problem 25 years down the road if we're all still here. But we want it away from the asphalt. So our other concern is the roots coming into the asphalt, causing tripping hazards as well. So we want to set it back. We're willing to, and he is willing to, you know, make that area and then add more trees, whatever the board requests.
Bill, can you comment on the volume of trees, the density of trees that are on those 2 properties? Would it meet requirements now with those 2 trees gone? Well, I'm just wondering what's existing out there. We do look at that at times, what's on the property. When we start talking about mitigation, and this obviously didn't require any type of tree survey for this type of project.
no, all this is sort of new from the first presentation. That's why we are asking a lot of questions. No, the first one was simply granted.
So, no, I would do it, but he would have to release responsibility from us. Our concern is that when we go to mill, so a milling machine is the thing that you see on the highway where the conveyor belts just shooting the asphalt in the back of the truck. We mill that old asphalt up. And our concern is that if we hit the roots, I can't promise you that we don't kill the tree by doing that. So our whole thing is, you know, if I'm just concerned for my company from that end. But I think, you know, what our concern is the buildings, you know, the people, the branches already fallen down 3/4 of the way. It's a safety issue for us. Yes, sir. Yes.
It's natural and normal for that to happen. And
Right.
it's different varieties of pines. And we have foresters here on this board that can tell you probably, gosh, how many different kinds of pines And so the picture that you had that was full,
Yes.
as opposed to these two. Right, and it's
Well, that was
very
the
different.
church that sits on Old Orangeburg Road, Rayback Road. It's been there for 40 years. It's a Pentecostal church, which is right down the road from our shop. But the trees that are in the back of the property still have limbs. Now, maybe they're not as old as you're suggesting,
Or a different variety.
or a different variety, yes, ma'am. But our concern still is the flooding, safety and stuff like that.
So when you know, how far back is that?
We typically go 2 inches, all right? But on this, where you see the pavement is so uneven, we're gonna have to grade as well.
Driving down into the dirt.
Yes, sir. And some of these you can see in the pictures where the ground is so moist. We're actually, and then we want to be able to have grade, proper grade to go where the waterfall is supposed, the stormwater is supposed to go. And that's a major concern for us as far as the stormwater department, because they are, I can tell you from buying my property up on Grayback Road, I fought for about 8 months of stormwater to make sure that I had proper stormwater runoff on my property on 2.5 acres. So those are just some of the concerns.
Yeah, I think on the original permit, it was just concerned for limbs falling off the trees, and it wasn't anything about grading the
That's correct.
parking lot.
That's correct.
So this is all new to us.
Yes, sir. So Cody provided you information that his company does. I'm the general contractor, the asphalt guy that's doing it. So these were some of the concerns that were relayed to me by Mr. Herzog. More than welcome to call him. And then things that when I did my investigation as far as the grade and other concerns that we had, I just felt compelled to put his 2 cents in and represent him during this. Yes, if there's something for me, I'd love to be able to pay it. But I think, if we don't address the tree situation down the road, we'll be back in here again of it damaging the asphalt.
Any more questions or comments?
So that ditch that we have seen, that's not adequate, when there's heavy rain,
No, sir.
because the water doesn't get into it, basically.
So we plan on
Is that correct?
actually where you see this on the first page, the
Right,
square box, we're actually putting in a drain right there. And we're gonna have to put in a 15-inch RCP and run it on the back side where the trees were initially at. If the trees are removed, then we can run it to the swale that is between both properties that go out to the back of the property. And that's how it was permitted, set up to begin with.
does that parking lot fill up? It's hard to see from these pictures.
Yes, sir. In that middle right there, you want to talk about water. I wish we had pictures, but it's at least 12 inches of water that just sits right in the middle of between both parking lots.
Where that square box is
Yes,
on
sir.
the color photo.
Yes, sir.
Well, we could see the potential for that when we were there. It was a very uneven, sloppy situation, and uneven situation, I guess that's a better word.
Any more comments or questions? I think we did, on one of the pine trees, we did see a cavity with some binoculars toward the top. Of course, we don't know what that's going on right there, but there's a chance one of the trees may be declining anyway. But,
There's a limit to what we can see from the bottom.
But this
I wasn't
changes-
gonna
this-
find that
this-
tree.
I mean, that doesn't change the reason why.
The trees are healthy, as Bill has stated, but this is much bigger than that. This is a whole different story, so I'm thinking we're just gonna take the we know the trees are healthy. There's a little question about one of them, but they still, it's very pruning, the natural pruning is just a part of life. There's some pruning that can be done on those trees to minimize some of the potential future threats. But it's a whole new concept here and willingness to do 100% mitigation. Maybe we should take that into consideration.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we allow removal of trees and to have perhaps Bill help out with the strategy of the 100% mitigation.
And the tree stump too, that's about.
Oh,
20
you
feet
can
from
take the
the-
tree stump out anytime you want.
That's not accurate. Yeah, that's done. So you understand what
Yes, I mean,
and it's not, azaleas don't count.
no, I agree. It'll be some form of tree that
Azaleas, fine.
Bill would suggest to us, and the owner would be more than happy.
That means that we'll measure those two trees, the calibration of those two trees will be reflecting the calibration of those two trees. Calibration. And there are two trees that take what size tree you want to buy.
Or if it oversaturates property, then the balance of the money involved in it is donated to the, or placed in the Somerville Town Tree Fund.
I would be more than willing to do that for my part, because I want parking lot to be right.
What trees that we want to in there.
Whatever you suggest, we'll do that. And I'd be more than happy to make a contribution to the tree committee.
Again, don't,
We can measure these trees.
Right. you see how many trees we're talking about, right? They add up when you do it this way. And there's no sense oversaturating. This is another option, and that's a good option.
And so we try to work with you to make these good things happen that will please all of us and still stick to our concerns about preservation of trees, but knowing that they're fine. And see, some of this information we didn't even have
Yes,
until
ma'am.
today.
It was.
No
excuse.
excuse.
No excuse. I apologize.
And that's fine. We got to the bottom of it evidently. The motion is to allow the removal of 2 trees, and along with that mitigation for those trees, 2 trees at 100%. And Bill will work with you and the property owner if necessary to make that happen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have a second? Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Oh, boy.
Again, thank y'all.
Thank you. All right, next order of business is new business, 450 Azalea Square Boulevard, removal of 10 pine trees. Morning.
Good morning, how are y'all?
Good.
Good. My name is John Fishback. I'm with the Greenery of Charleston, and we are representing the Azalea Square Shopping Center, the owners of Fairborn. They're located in Chicago, so that's why they're not here themselves. So we're asking to remove the 10 pine trees that were left under the master plan in front of 450 Azalea Square Boulevard. Some of our questions are, one is mainly why were the trees left in the master plan? Because they're the only ones on site that were left in the middle of a parking lot. I feel like they're an inappropriate tree for the setting, which is basically planted in an asphalt pot. We do understand that it's Somerville. The pine tree is a kind of a symbol of the town. We understand that. There's also pine trees around the entire perimeter of Azalea Square. These 10 pines, we feel like are a trip hazard. All the roots they provide through the bed. We know that the pedestrians constantly cut through the bed. It's also, there's asphalt damage that is occurring. One of the big problems with that is that asphalt damage is going to be long-term and continuous with those trees there, because the trees are nowhere near fully grown. They're relatively small in the size of full full-size pine tree. And that all that damage is eventually going to get passed on to the tenants of the retail center through increases in rent, what have you, as everything happens. We are looking at this master plan keeps getting brought back up. And those are the only pines in that area, whereas the rest of the area is maples, elms, crepe myrtles, palm trees, etc. And the owners are willing to mitigate by installing different varieties of trees if we were allowed to put these trees. Some of the ideas were to put in some like 5 elm trees and 5 palms along that line. I'm
That
sorry.
would not qualify. That would not qualify.
Oh, those don't qualify. Okay. Okay. Well, we were just going with something that would be less intrusive to the asphalt.
Grass would qualify, yeah, that would be that.
Yeah. The big thing that they're questioning is they feel like it's an inappropriate tree to be left in a retail setting in the middle of a parking lot. As Bill said, pine trees self-prune, so you open yourself up to the liability of as these lower limbs fall, they hit cars and pedestrians. Same thing, PNCs are a small little grove, if you will, of trees. We get hit by a hurricane, what have you, you're going to incur the cost of damage of those trees falling on cars and hurting them. That's basically all I have.
So other than we were there the other day, the one raised area there, is there any other places, asphalt that are damaged? I mean,
Not yet. We're still in the early phases.
We're not convinced that that's the tree.
yeah,
As wide as that area was, what, it was something like 4 feet maybe? I'm guessing now, wide, that raised area. And you talk about those, trees that are, being immature, they're not gonna have root systems that big, it's bigger than the trunk of the tree.
Well, I mean, in theory, the root system of a tree is take a mirror image of the canopy. Everything I've looked at was caught. No, you're right.
and it could be the fact that it's damaged, and we just didn't really see a lot of evidence, and of course, you know, what you're talking about, the mirror image, I mean, that's kind of a place where you don't have parking lots and curbs
Right.
and stuff like that. I mean, I think we saw many of the root systems following the curbing itself.
That was actually amazing, that the last tree on the road was behaving itself and going right through the tunnel and has nothing but a wide expanse of open soil ahead. I wasn't worried about that. Yes, it's a tripping hazard. I mean, I could give all my opinions all day long about how cool I think it is to have a little bit of a native stand in the middle of progress and change in palm trees and things and elm trees. They got a lot of nice oaks in there. Unfortunately, there's never enough room left for the trees to grow, as you know.
Correct.
And but I don't see them as a threat now. They may be a threat later, yes, in another 10 years as they grow. I don't know if anybody does maintenance on the grounds. They should. There's pruning that needs to be on these urban forestry settings. There's always work to be done, not just on pine trees, but on the elm trees and on the oak trees. Anticipation for dying branches is an easy thing on a straight and up down tree like a pine tree. I just don't feel the threat somehow at this time to look into the future and say, yeah, the hurricane comes. Hopefully nobody's there when the hurricane. I have heard this news and it can, but all those things are possible and potential. I guess I just didn't. I personally really didn't feel a threat, and I question the bubble of asphalt that's offset from the curb by a significant amount of distance, and that's sort of weird. They usually start busting through the curb, and that gradual swelling is moving into the parking lot. The leading edge is preceded by the back edge, and there's no evidence of that. It's just like, who knows what it is. It could be the tree. It could be an aberrant kind of growth. It may have hit something underneath there and came up. If that were the case and we were sure of that, I'd be more than happy to feel comfortable getting rid of the tree that was most likely creating that, but that's part of the thing.
You talk about, tripping hazards, make the, just pick
No, it's the roots they were talking about.
Yeah, and we do pick up the pine cone. It's a weekly event. There's always pine cones, I get that. It's just that the root structure that is on the surface is more concerning than the pine cone.
Well, I guess you could say the same about the curving. I mean, I'm just as guilty of tripping over curving and getting up, because I've cut through there before myself.
Yeah,
Did you trip on the curb?
I did trip on the curb and I tripped on the roots. Maybe I started looking harder because of that, but
that's the problem. But it's the problem, and what their point is, people do cut through there. If somebody does trip, fall, break their arm, what have you, but got bit, they're going to sue. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And they lose. I've seen it happen many times, unfortunately. People slip on ice, knowing that it's ice, you shouldn't walk like that, but the judge says you didn't clean the sidewalk.
I find it the first to be a pine tree, very, there is a, I'm not convinced that the asphalt is that there's a concern about that. Also, that it's along the inside of the person.
My opinion is fine. And then, I mean, they spend money on tree work. They're not looking to cut down every tree out there. Although stuff they come through the day to have listed as dead once a year. But they are on it. About everything concrete around the side for shopping center. Their biggest fear is the life.
so y'all suggesting if these trees came down, you would plant back, you said elms and different things in that same area?
Yeah.
And you-
Whatever y'all would dig in on another part of the property, they're willing to do that.
I'm saying, if you plant something back there in the future, you're gonna have root systems there causing issues again. So, I mean, that doesn't take care of the issue long-term.
It's cut those down because it's out those root systems in front of there, to then plant something else that would create more root situation.
Is this the largest island in the parking lot?
But the only item,
There's plenty of-
No, there's
There are
plenty of
other islands,
islands.
but this is the largest one that has it's the only one that really truly has a grove of trees in it.
Right.
The rest of them are more divided with a tree, kind of
I mean,
smaller trees like maples and stuff that are just,
are you responsible for the maintenance of the trees? Okay.
well, the trees to 10 feet. After that, it's outside of our realm. We bring the tree companies to our realm.
Okay. I mean, the rest of the islands, the trees have done miraculously well. I love some of the stuff that was done there. And I just thought this was a really cool, back to nature, back to their old school, old world vision. I have trouble with this. You no doubt have heard all the presentations prior, and isn't it something that liability has become the Damoclean sword of the tree?
It's a huge thing. Well, you can mitigate the liability of somebody cut through it by putting a rail around that island, so nobody can cut through it, you eliminate the liability.
right, or you can put a cap in it, get off the cap.
Boy, that's a good idea, both of them.
Or I would just put a sign that park on the top. Make it a.
They're not worried about, they're worried about the life. They're not worried about the cost. Mitigated or strictly.
Would the fence be a new source of liability? Otherwise, I think that's a great idea.
I've been landscaping for 15 years. I've seen some crazy of people went over.
But again, if you have a 1 foot barrier, the town people not going there. They have their own way. Like you said, people do crazy.
I mean, you can close the pool down, but somebody gets in there and drowns.
Yeah.
That's not what that was.
Well, obviously, I mean, none of us are lawyers on this board, and I mean, you look through the entire parking lot, there's all sorts of hazards out there if someone's not paying attention. So I don't see this being any different than walking on the pavement itself. Anyways, any more questions, any more comments? Anybody want to make a motion?
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we deny.
Any discussion?
And that future discussion and revisiting would be totally welcome if things change, even the slightest bit, as they will over time. We just hate doing it right now or something like.
Yeah, I thought it was before they get completely mature, it's easy to take them down.
I understand.
I think one of the things we talked about the other day, though, the access to these trees is really good. It's not like in the backyard of a house or so. I mean, so a bucket truck could get up in there and work very easily and safely. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. We had discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the permit will not be provided,
What would be the
approved.
what would be the next step for our client? Like what Bob put out?
Jesse, you want to?
Okay. We just want to be on top of it.
Well, as far as legal, it's in the ordinance. You can read it in the ordinance, or
Okay.
the property owner can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you. All right, last new business would be 104 Oak Bluff Road, removal of 1 live oak tree. I know the property owner's not here today. So we know his issue was he had to repair the water line near the meter itself. I think he said one
Twice.
time, twice? Okay, twice. But he did it.
And the one was fairly recent, because I remember being surprised how this is on a dry slope, the grass and everything had recovered so quickly from pretty big hole, because they went down to the exit from the main line, which had to elbow up, I don't know how far, and then come over to the house. So, but that route has been cut, and that would not be a challenge. Only thing I feel about this one is that we shouldn't have to wait for the next water line break to come back and get the tree taken down. Because the tree is put in a place where probably, for what it is, probably should have been put there in the first place. He had no control over that. He's done a wonderful job pruning it, keeping it pruned. It's growing very well, apparently.
Is there not a side point that people can use where roots cannot penetrate it?
Well, it probably just broke it. Everybody uses PVC, and that's all it's going to be.
Like now, with
Oh, do they? Okay, so
pipe, a lot more flexible, a lot more giving, a more crack.
so it must have been a fitting then it blew, right? And his,
No, he has a PVC pipe in there instead.
oh,
But if you use the text pipe, you use
Right.
now,
Yeah, right.
it can move and won't crack.
Right.
Well, again, we can't see underneath what's going on there. I mean, you'd hope that'd be, you said 2 times, but that's too many, I guess, this one individual.
I mean, that point is could be considered a hotel.
No, because that's the only thing that bothers me, is because the roots are continuing to expand underground. As they grow just like the trunk, and we don't know if there's one, halfway up the yard that's resting right next to pipe. It's gonna snap it later.
The chances are they didn't go deeper as they went up the hill. I mean, they probably stayed at the same
Right.
level underground.
Yeah, they can do anything they want. There's no houses there, right? No other, anything else, I guess. Houses that's sitting there.
Is that correct? Street, state streets and, bridges. Required.
Most likely, I mean, I don't have confirmation of that, but most likely it wasn't required.
You have more trees than you want. It won't be more out of the street.
And I think he was willing to do mitigation if he didn't have the
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 proper
number of
numbers,
trees.
right?
Could you do some kind of, roof cleaning close to that site that would prevent the problem occurring again?
Yeah, that'd probably might cost them as much as taking the tree down.
Yeah, I'm just trying to save the tree.
I know.
And I'm not well, I mean, it's just part of doing it. We told him if he ever did anything there, like roof in, make sure he had everything located. I'm not sure what's running through their cable or electrical or gas, whatever.
He seems to be, pretty sharp about all this.
Yeah.
And was, accepting the agreeable to.
Yeah, I think like Peter mentioned, he's really spent some time and effort having people come in there and maintain that tree. Anybody want to make a motion on this? Is there any more discussion?
I don't have any more. These are difficult.
I make a motion that would allow him to get free and, we'll look at the other trees that
You have a second?
Second.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Under miscellaneous, Jesse, how long we been doing this meeting together as a group now? I mean, since UDO has been here, we've now changed our process, it's not going out in the field, but we started meeting inside. How long after that did we start doing this?
We didn't start doing it until last summer, did we?
You mean going back to everybody together?
No, just us meeting like this in an open forum, and voting on, with people present. I just wondered, has it been a year?
I think it was December of 2019. I think. Didn't we start almost immediately?
Would have been,
But we were down.
would have been November. Would we keep a board as opposed to a committee?
I won't even hear that.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I'm not sure the chairman and the vice chairman, how long they're supposed to stay in their positions. And I am
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
Whatever.
and I actually I am fine with doing this. That's no problem. I just want to make sure that if there's somebody else that was interested in it, and we've gotten to that point, that it's reasonable to make a change, then I'm all for it. If not, we can continue as we're going for now. Everybody want to do that?
Is that a motion? I'll second
It
that.
has to be a motion. I'm just
I'm
asking for
just
comment.
kidding, but no, I'm okay. If you're okay.
I just want to make
You
sure.
do a good job.
All right, so someone asked for a motion for adjournment. Do I have that motion?
I make a motion. that we
Second.
adjourn.
We have